Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cities Skylines, where we are building the city of Delta Coast. Right now we are looking at the future site of the Delta Coast National Wetlands. What I mean by that is, in today's episode, I plan to turn this forestry area and this wetlands area into a nature reserve. A nature reserve is one of the park areas that we get to build as part of the Park Life DLC, and we're going to get started building that today. I think this will be a great spot to, take advantage of the scenery and have a nice, preserved section of land that can benefit our city. Some other things on the checklist for today is I'd like to reconfigure our road access. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of refactoring over here and adding another kind of on-ramp into the highway over here. And lastly, what I plan to do is really think about kind of top to bottom how our city is going to function transit-wise. We added some options for intercity travel last episode, where we have a bus station and a train station. So I want to think kind of holistically about how we get people, especially people coming into our town from outside of the city, how we get them all the way down to this new area. One last kind of thought is this area is a nice plot of land and, it is close to the shore. I do think it makes sense to have some higher density over here. So we are lastly going to be exploring some high density options. So we have a lot of ground to cover in today's episode. So I think the best thing we should do is get started. The first thing that I'd like to do is lay out the foundation for our nature reserve. So I will first paint a park area. And I'm just going to grab the area that has the trees in it. And we can refine the area further throughout the episode. But I think this area is a pretty generous plot of land that we can work with. Maybe we cut it off over there. But I actually like that rock feature, so I'm inclined to keep it. So now that we have this park, the next thing we can do is find a nice entrance for the nature reserve. My logic is I think it makes sense to get it started now. The nature reserves, as I've seen, tend to level up a lot slower than the other parks, so the sooner we get started on it, the better off we are. So I'm seeing kind of a nice entryway into the nature reserve. I think I'd like to include this cliff feature as well as the existing trees over here, so maybe we extend the boundary just a little bit and then have this be kind of a nice entrance into that area. So I think we can lay down the roads for that. I'm going to be using gravel roads because I think that would be appropriate for a nature area. And one thing that I think makes sense is to have kind of like a little bit of a triangle shaped entrance into this area. So I'm going to use my road guidelines to build that, but I think we can kind of do something like this. Maybe that's less of a triangle, more of a wishbone, but some sort of a directional flow I think makes sense. And I don't think we have one-way gravel roads, so I think we'll just have to deal with that, which is totally fine. And the first thing that we'll want to place is the nature reserve main gate, which can go right here. And we get a lot of different options as a result. Okay, and the next thing we're going to want to do is bring some water over to it. So this will be temporary, and I think we'll want to redo this in the future. But I think the first thing we're going to want to do is build a road over there. So we are definitely going to be redoing this. This is not a long-term plan. So, we'll be revisiting this. I just think for now it makes sense to get some people over here. However, I do want to build this portion of road, which I think we will stick with. So something like this, and making that final connection over here. And I see that local road over here definitely being more permanent. Because this is kind of a nice entryway into that park. But again, this is the road where we will absolutely be revisiting this and making something a little bit more lasting, because this is not what we want long term. But that will do for now. So given that road, we can make some water connections. And I'm just noticing, I think I have natural disasters turned on. I can confirm that in the menu. But in between last episode and this episode, I did get an update to the game, which I believe reset a lot of defaults. So the random disaster frequency is slightly higher than I had it initially, which was somewhere around here. And I think it's also kind of like an exponential scale. So the difference between this and this is quite high. So we are going to get hit with an earthquake, and we'll have to see what happens. Magnitude of 4.1 doesn't sound so bad for our city, though, so I think it'll be okay. All right, where's this earthquake? Right over here. Okay, so we had an earthquake, definitely a little bit of land scarring, and kind of a fissure that was created that disrupted the water flow. So maybe this might have some effects downstream, but overall, I don't think that was such a big deal. I take that back. I really take that back. I'm noticing that we definitely got hit by that earthquake. I didn't think that that was that severe, but it appears that we did have some damage to our city. So it looks like, compared to the abandoned residences or abandoned buildings that we have 13 collapsed buildings. So, okay, we're going to have to take a short detour and take care of this. This is interesting. This gives us a nice opportunity to talk about the Natural Disasters DLC. So, although I don't think that earthquake was a particularly large deal, we do have to deal with these collapsed buildings. So the way we do that is by building a disaster response unit. The idea is that this is kind of an established government agency that is responsible for cleaning up, when natural disasters and events like that take place. They're kind of similar to a National Guard in that they respond to disasters and kind of help facilitate a lot of the not only cleanup, but a lot of the recovery in the wake of disasters. And just like other buildings, they will send out vehicles and helicopters. And in our case, the helicopters and vehicles that get sent out will go around to the collapsed buildings and will make it so that they are recoverable. So the building itself has been destroyed, and by visiting the collapsed building site and working with it, we'll be able to have that building be zoned in the future. So that's kind of how that mechanic works. Maybe we can follow one of those and kind of see what happens. So I think this is one that we'll follow. So it's going to, this residence right here, and it's going to land and search for survivors. And then, once survivors are found, hopefully the building will be available for zoning. And it's interesting, this was just a one-by-one tile of residence. So we'll see what happens there. After a brief visit, we get this icon, which indicates that it's ready for rebuilding. And because we had demand, it's now rezoning. So that went, exactly as we wanted it to. So I think we'll, we now see that we don't have any collapsed buildings, and they're all ready for rezoning. So we had the demand, and those buildings are being built. So that is what happens when you have an earthquake or other natural disasters. Back at our nature reserve, I think we need to finish building out the water, so we'll do that. Okay, and what I do want to do for now is find a way to get folks over to that area. And I think the easiest way we can do that is by building a bus route. So this is going to be a very, very basic bus route, but what it's going to do is get people from our neighborhoods in this area over here and get them over to that nature reserve. So I'm going to build a very basic loop in this neighborhood. And And then after picking up a few of those people, it's just going to go directly over to our nature reserve and stop there. And that's it. And to complete the loop, it's just going to go back to where it started. I'm not going to build this in reverse. This is just, a temporary bus route that we will have to start to get some traffic over there. So we will call this the National Wetlands Reserve Loop. We'll color it green. And I think that will, do the trick. So what I'd like to do is basically get this park in a state where we think it can level up. So in order to accomplish that, we will need visitors as well as entertainment. Now we're already meeting the entertainment value, and I wonder why that is. It's possible that the park entrance provides entertainment value, and that's interesting. We only have an entertainment value of 50 coming from the reserve gate, and yet our area has an entertainment value of 300. So technically we are meeting expectations, but we're not doing anything. That might be because of the scenery. It's possible that the game evaluates this land as being desirable and gives us a nice boost. I'm not too sure. But in any event, let's look through our policies and say that we want an advertisement campaign. We'll pay for more visitors. We'll make this our main park. And we will recycle garbage, which will decrease the garbage accumulation for this reserve, which is great. So let's start to build out maybe some of our assets in this area and consider what those will be. Looks like we have access to campfire site, number 1 and 2, tent 1 and 2, and 3, and that's about it. So maybe the first thing that we can consider is building kind of a campground, which I think would be really, really neat. So I really like this area. It's surrounded by cliffs, and it's a little bit wide open. What I've seen happen in other playthroughs is when campfires are built in a dense forest, it tends to catch fire. So I want to avoid that altogether. Although it would be cooler to camp in the woods, I think the safer bet for us would be to have a path and kind of a campground that's a little bit tucked away from the forestry. One issue that I see is we have severe power problems. I wonder why that is. We are just consuming way more electricity than we have available. So let's deviate once again and figure that out. One option for electricity generation that we have available to us is the solar updraft tower. And the reason I would like to place that is, although it's significantly more expensive, it has a really, really high power output. So I'm going to go ahead and place that. The reason our production was so low a minute ago is because I've already deleted the coal power plant. I got a little bit ahead of myself. So between the solar updraft tower and the oil power plant, we have a really, really high electricity production. Our budget was through the roof beforehand, so let's see what it looks like as we scale it down. Even then, it's still way, way above what we need, so we can get away with dialing back our budget quite a bit. We have now a ton of room to grow. So cutting it close there, and I think 85 sounds about right. That'll give us more room to expand. Absolutely. So I think that will definitely be helpful for the immediate future. Back in our nature reserve area, I want to now go back to building that path that we had talked about. And I just want to make a pretty simple path that gets us over here. And from there, we can start to build a small campground. And I think what we have here is going to be sufficient. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 little nodes where we can build some campsites and some tent sites off of. And this is going to be just a marker reminding us that, we want to dive a little bit further into the woods to build some more stuff. So for now, what we're going to do is build some pretty targeted, campground sites for our guests. And that's going to just be composed of, the campground site, which is, I believe, a fireplace, and then we'll place some tents alongside that as well. And I think that looks quite good. Again, not a perfect landscape architect, but it looks like we have a visitor that is going to the tent number 1, which is great. Let's see how our area is doing overall. It looks like we are far exceeding the expected entertainment value, and we are getting a slow trickle of visitors. So I think right now it makes sense to maybe leave this area alone. Ooh, we are getting a nice stream of cars coming, and I'm interested to see what they're doing. They're going to the campfire site, going to the tent, going to the tent. This is awesome. I really, really like seeing this. So, that road we built, even though it's just kind of small and not doing much, it's getting people to our nature reserve, which is fantastic. So we will develop this out throughout the episode as we reach new levels, but I imagine this is going to be a multi-episode adventure just because of how slowly visitors will come. Although we did just advance quite a bit with a lot of people that just walked in. I think that was had everything to do with the bus that just dropped some people off. So maybe I'll be surprised. Let's see what happens. One thing I'd like to do now is really, really give some thought to the roadway hierarchy that we have established and figure out how are we going to make a really, really nice connection to support not just the nature reserve, but this whole area over here. We may have some development over here in the future, although it is on a pretty prominent hill, and I think that would be hard to develop, though, I think we want to think about how we're going to get people in this area. We do have this option, to kind of stem off of this arterial with a collector. We're certainly going to do that and have a collector road that continues down into this area, but what I think we're missing is a way to have, a lot of people come directly from the highway and enter into this area. So I'm imagining an arterial that intersects with a collector and in kind of a terminal fashion. So maybe it would help if I took the collector that we do have already and kind of mapped out what I'm thinking. And in order to do that, I think I want to maybe take some of this road back and replace it with the collector that I'd been envisioning. So I think it makes sense for it to terminate over here, and maybe that's a little bit of an awkward intersection because of all of the different roads. So we'll have to think about that. Maybe we upgrade this. I think that's fine. Maybe that gives us the opportunity to add a little bit more over here. So I think that's okay. But what I want is to, have a collector that comes through here. And this is great. This just continues off of a pretty prominent intersection in a meaningful way. But what I think is missing is having an arterial coming from the highway and terminating, right around here. And what this is going to do, again, with this being kind of a dense downtown area, what this is going to do is really, really, shuttle people over here, which I think is definitely desired. In fact, I'm imagining, maybe another collector in here, and I think it would be kind of desired to maybe even bypass this collector and build a bridge over here, which sounds crazy, but I'll kind of show you what I'm thinking in a minute. So maybe let's work on figuring out what the plan is for this arterial and how it's going to make its way over here. So I think first and foremost, it's going to hug the mountainside. What I don't want to do is further divide up this land. So I want to make sure that wherever I put it, it hugs the mountainside and makes the best use of land. So I'm going to take back everything I said, and this is the road that we're going to use. I really like this right here. And again, we'll probably give some more thought to this road right here. I'm just upgrading all of them because I'm realizing these roads are going to serve a pretty big purpose. So that makes sense to me. And we will not have that intersection right there. And, you know, because I like where that road was, maybe we can, you know, build it over the arterial. I know I'm probably going all over the place right now, but there's a method to my madness, and you'll see. So let's just build that over because I do want to keep that road intact. I don't want to just get rid of it altogether. So I think that makes sense. Okay, and we can do something with that in the future. That'll spill out over there. But the idea is that this arterial is going to hug the mountainside and give us direct highway access. What I'm thinking for highway connections is basically going to be copying an existing interchange that I really like. Now, I don't really understand highway design, but I believe this is called a trumpet interchange. I believe like this little spiral right here resembles either the horn of a trumpet or kind of the place where you hold a trumpet. But in any event, it provides a really nice interchange and allows traffic to flow off of the highway. So, you know, if we were to replicate this interchange, then we can send traffic from the highway onto a rotary. And I think having a rotary right here would make perfect sense. But first, I'm going to get started on replicating this interchange right here. And we just leveled up already, so it seems like getting that 500 visitors was no problem. Once I'm done building this interchange, I'm going to revisit the campsite, or the nature reserve, sorry. So I finally finished this intersection. I now have much more respect for people who build intersections or interchanges. I think this looks okay. It is going to do exactly what the other one does. Let me just make sure I have the directionality all good. So this is going to be kind of entering back on the highway, and this is going to be getting onto our rotary. And so now those match up. And so from here, what I can do is build that rotary that I've been speaking about. So I'm going to center it right around here and build it roughly the same size as my other ones. And it never seems to like the guide roads. It doesn't really let me change the direction of the one-ways when that's the case. And yeah, so now that looks like it's doing well. So I'm going to add the guide road back in just because if I don't have them, when I do connect up with the arterials, it may morph the shape of the rotary. So I'm thinking it makes sense to connect this up. It doesn't really need to be a perfect... I want the intersection with it to be a 90-degree angle, but it doesn't need to intersect at one of those guide road points. So in a future episode, I think I'm going to stay away from doing anything too much today, but in a future episode, we will completely reconfigure what's going on over here. But I'm not going to be playing in this area too much for a couple episodes, so we have some time. Back in our nature reserve, I want to check out what's going on. We leveled up, and we've had quite a few visitors. I think that this bus line is actually doing pretty well. Can't see it here, but it looks like we're shuttling some passengers over, which is fantastic. So, you know, it looks like this is about to drop 11 people off. That's great. We're just getting waves of people coming into the reserve. So I think the next set of things for us to build, let's see what our milestone is. We're already over the entertainment value, so this is just for fun. The next set of things that we can build, it looks like, are these viewing decks. And I think there was something else that came with it. I could be wrong, though. Let's see. Was it a large building? Yes, I think it's this tent camping site, which seems like a neat thing. So let's think about where we would want to place our viewing decks. Maybe we'll first place the tent camping site. You know, this is a larger kind of plot where many different tents can camp. And I think having, you know, maybe one or two of them would make sense. I do want to keep them, you know, around the same general area as the other sites. So, you know, I think that works. You know, that's just some added attraction. And now the viewing decks. I think I like the idea of having a view that outlooks kind of that whole area. So I'm actually thinking about expanding the nature reserve up in here a little bit. So let's build a path up this hillside and then place some viewing decks over there. Okay, and I think we avoided, you know, damaging the land too much. Who knows if people will actually walk up there, but I think that that's pretty reasonable. And now we just need to make our way over there. And I really like that. This is going to add a little bit of value. You know, not actual monetary value, but I think it's going to add some value to this this overlook. So I'm going to build around here and just have a nice walking path kind of along the cliff. I imagine people who are into hiking or just really like good views would come along here. I think that that looks really nice. And maybe giving people an alternative way to, you know, end up over there would be a good idea as well. So I'm going to build this path going down the hill as well. I think that looks really good. Now we can place some of those observation decks. And then we can do the viewing deck number 2, and I like the idea of maybe having a couple face out over here. Even if it's on a really steep cliff, I think that would be a really neat kind of thing to check out. And I think that makes me want to change that just a little bit. So let's see. You know, you have a really nice view of the campground. You can look out and see the whole delta. And you can see the kind of the main harbor and the ocean from over here. I'm really happy with what we've done over here. One thing we can do is maybe frame this with fences, just so we, you know, take care of that. And I can't imagine anyone is going to sneak onto the property, you know, this way. And even if they do, I don't think that fence is going to stop them. So let's look. I see some people walking around here, and I honestly didn't know what to expect, just given this is such a long path. I am thrilled to see people over here. That's just such a nice view. And yeah, this person looks like they're having a great time kind of hiking up. It's an old person with a cane. That's great. High Wealth Senior. They're going to a viewing deck. Let's see what they're doing. Look at that. That was worth the hike. You can just see that people are really attracted to this amenity, and we just have a lot of visitors. We may even level up today again. Yeah, I think by the end of today's episode, we're definitely going to hit that mark. So one thing I am seeing is that we're having a fire in here. I think that's to be expected. Let's see if we have any fire helicopters coming over here. We can usually spot them kind of in the distance. Let's see what happens. This area is going to burn down. Oh no. Oh no, this is awful. I really want to make sure that the depot's responding. Okay, it looks like there are some helicopters in use, and they're heading out. I think it's going to be too late. Oh no, that's such a bummer. Oh, that's awful. It would just be a shame if this whole area caught fire, so I hope they're able to put that out. Even though we have a fire, it looks like people are just still kind of heading in. So, you know, they don't know what to do because that campsite's on fire right now, but I just feel awful for the people that are there. Let's see how this progresses. And for these amenities that have burned down, which is kind of this charred icon, that disaster response unit that we built earlier will actually come in handy. They're going to come and, you know, reclaim that area, and then we'll have to go in and manually rebuild it. But we just have a pretty big forest fire to contend with right now, which is a shame. With these, we have to go in and manually rebuild, which we will do. I'm thinking if we're going to be having campfires over here, we should A, clear that area of all the trees that we had, and B, I think we definitely are in need of some helicopter services over here. So it's just a matter of figuring out what the right location for it is. You know, I think we want to be careful about building too close to over here, but we can always move stuff in the future. So if I were to just build, you know, a simple area over here, I think we can get that helicopter coverage that we desperately need. So I'm going to build in a depot over here. I'm also going to build in a fire watch tower, which will help with fire coverage in this area. And I think the combination of those two things will be helpful. You know, we just have such a large fire in here that I don't know how we're going to put that out. So one other thing I'm noticing is unrelated to all that, we do have a death care problem where we have a lot of dead bodies that are piling up, and I'm wondering what the status of our cemeteries are. You know, this one's very close to being full, and this one is well on its way. So it's possible that for now we need another cemetery. Although we are fairly close to the crematorium unlock at 17,000. So if we were to place a kind of cemetery over here that we knew we're going to get rid of, I think that will get us to 17,000 and take care of our needs. So, you know, I plan to take care of that and delete that in the future. And so I'm just placing that to help take care of some of that need. We do need to run water over to the depot, so I'll do that now. We are just still seeing issues. Hopefully the 6 of those helicopters can put those out before it's a problem. And how are we doing over here? You know, it looks like people are coming back and they're using everything, so that's good. If we start to see, you know, aggressive issues with fires in this area, we will certainly want to, you know, look into maybe taking some of those campfire sites away and seeing what can be done there. So it looks like the forest fire is behind us, so we're in a good spot now, and it's just a matter of getting the visitor count to level up. So one thing that I want to consider now that we have our roadway figured out is I want to really think about how to get people from this area of town over to this area. And this isn't just for the purpose of getting them over to our national park, which I'll rename right now. So it's, not just for the sole purpose of getting folks over to the Delta Coast National Wetlands, but, we do care about this area that we're going to develop shortly. And, I think it makes sense to just have a higher capacity form of transit to get people into that area. If we look at our transit menu, it's clear that our buses are just way oversubscribed. If we click in here and look at the passenger count at the bus stops, 233 is way too many people to be waiting for a bus. This is a pretty simple bus route, and it's almost faster to walk than wait for the buses. So I'm not going to be doing any intense analysis or research. I'm just going to be doing what I think is right. And what that is for me is placing Metro. Metro is really convenient because it can be built underground, and so you don't have to really contend with above ground transportation. It does make a lot of noise, so it may upset some residents, so we'll be careful about where we put it, but I'm just thinking if we start in this area of town and basically follow this collector all the way down, that'll be a really good first route. And we'll add some stops. It won't be as frequent as the bus or tram, but it will definitely be helpful in shuttling people from one area to the next. So let's start there. And, again, we're just going to be doing what we think is right, placing this at major intersections, high value areas. And I'm going to be keeping an eye on transfer opportunities to other modes of transit. So, this is desirable for me because it's very close to a tram, as is this. So, maybe that would be a good move, especially because it's close to, the neighborhood over there. I do, however, want to move it to the other side. And because this is a popular area, we talked about that before, I really like the idea of having something right there. Maybe also having something in this neighborhood. And we don't have anything over here to connect to yet, but I do think that this will be, a reasonably sized, corridor in the future. So we'll want to plan for that, maybe over there and over there. Connecting them up is very easy. You just hit page down to go underground, and you connect things up with the same kind of, road or builder tool that you had used in the past. And this part may be a challenge just because there's going to be some curvature to it, but that's okay. And although it may be pretty close to one another, I do think it's worthwhile to have one additional stop right there. So this is kind of a pretty silly distance to be stopping. So you know what? I think I just talked myself into maybe moving this down. And the idea is, just like trains, these metros will slow down when they have to turn. So you'll have speedier service the straighter things are. That's why you generally want to avoid big abrupt turns, but something like this is totally okay, not the end of the world. So now that we have all of our stations, it's just a matter of placing stops. And we will just want to create a line and then go around to each of our stations, adding a stop. And then we do the same thing in reverse. And when I say reverse, I mean within the same line, we just continue going, but in reverse. So you'll see, there's arrows flowing in this direction as well as going backwards. So, once a train or cab reaches the end of the line, it will just turn right back around or start going in the other direction and do its thing. So I think what we want to call this is kind of like the Old Town Main Line. We can rename that in the future, but I think that makes sense. And we can already see people queuing up, which is great. We can revisit that in the future, and hopefully that takes a bit of pressure off of our buses and trams. So 600 seems like a lot to me, and I'm hoping that this number lowers just a little bit. In our National Wetlands Nature Reserve area, we are fairly close to leveling up, so I'm just going to zip along and see if we can reach our milestone. We are now at level 3, which is fantastic, and we have some cool options available. So we have a camping site, a couple lean-to shelters, and lookout towers. So, you know, maybe some of the taller buildings like the lookout towers can be built in the kind of on the ridge, which I think would be really cool. And then the lean-to shelters could maybe be built, you know, further in the woods just a little bit. So, you know, we have the tent camping site, and now we have the camping site, which looks like it's a little bit bigger. So maybe we can find a couple spots to place a few of them without going too crazy. So this lookout tower doesn't look all that big. That's okay. It just isn't as tall as I thought it would be. Again, these are just going to be nice options for, you know, some viewing opportunities. I don't want to go too crazy. You know, I think having those few lookouts would be really cool. And I think, you know, having a few of those would be desired. And then for the camping sites, I think maybe just having 1 or 2 of them would be a good idea. You know, I'm thinking that this area looks really neat. And then if we were to maybe clear some trees over here, that would be another neat area to have a camping site as well. So I'm going to go with the tent camping site, or sorry, the camping site number 1. So if we think about where we can place our path, I think it would be really cool to have kind of like a little footbridge over here. And then to place the camping site, I think somewhere in there looks good. You know, we didn't clear all the trees, and that's kind of a nice little area. It's a little bit swampy, but you know, we're on national wetlands, so I think that looks okay. And that's connected up. Maybe having another one would be cool. Just having them in close proximity to each other, I think, is what I want. I like that. And now we just want to kind of work it back and get back to that main area. So maybe we'll snake through the woods, and even that is kind of a nice little attraction, just a nice little nature walk. So I think we'll keep that as is for now. I don't want to, you know, mess with that too much. We are far exceeding our you know, minimum entertainment value, and we just need to have some visitors. So I think, you know, we're well on our way to being in a good spot, and we're just getting a lot of use out of our amenities in here, and there's a fair amount of people that are willing to take this hike up here, which is fantastic. So pretty happy with that. I'd like to look at our transport and see how our metro's doing. So it looks like we're only using 3 vehicles, so that might account for kind of the low count. I think we want to have, you know, given that we have, how many stops do we have here? We have 12 stops. So, you know, I'm thinking we want probably like at least 8 vehicles or so. I think that will just make it more desired. And, you know, we're adding to our bus count, which is kind of a bummer. That line looks okay. It's this Old Town loop in reverse that's not doing super well. The inner city loop is totally fine, and the inner city loop in reverse is okay aside from this one stop, which is, of course, you know, right by our train station. So I'm hoping that people will instead use the metro as time goes on. One thing that I think is preventing that is the fact that it's on this side of the road and there's not a crosswalk. So you'll notice that no one's jaywalking and crossing the road, and they actually have to go all the way over here to this crosswalk in order to get across to that metro, which is kind of a bummer. You know, that person did it. I think they're going to the metro probably, but I want to, you know, avoid people having to do that out of necessity. I don't know how to place a crosswalk other than maybe cheating a little bit. I think I've seen someone do this before where you can, you know, like build a road in there and that adds a crosswalk. And I think that alone is reason enough to, you know, place an intersection. I think that might help. Now, what did that do? Did that break the bus line? Okay, now it's recovered. Okay, so that added that crosswalk, and I think that hopefully people will use that to cross the road as trains come in. One thing we can do is take care of our residential demand. I think we've seen that because we have such a high demand, people have been moving out of the city. We can check in our statistics, and yeah, we've definitely kind of capped, and people have been moving out. So I think our education is in a really good spot. So adding in some, residences and commercial uses in here wouldn't be such a bad idea. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So one thing that makes sense to me is, as we mentioned before, we built out this area so that we could accommodate tourism, specifically tourism commercial activity. So I think what we can do is maybe take this area back a little bit. I'd like to, if we take this area back a little bit and confine that tourism specialization to kind of this hill where the inner city transit is happening, then I think we can kind of control a lot of the noise that comes from that. So, if we were to zone some of that in, I'm not too worried about the noise spilling out and going too far beyond here. So we'll do that and see how that goes. One thing I totally failed to do is place paths, so we'll do that as well. And that's kind of a super outrageous slope. I hadn't really considered that, but maybe we can soften that up just a little bit. Okay, I think that looks pretty decent. I'm going to finish placing the commercial in this area. And I think it would make sense maybe along the rail tracks to have offices, which we don't currently have. So I can imagine, a few offices kind of popping up in this area. In fact, maybe it might be nice to break some of this area up and place some offices over here as well. It can't all be, tourism tourism specialization. And this is just a really large block right here. So, okay, I'm pretty happy with that. And what we can do is maybe start to kind of taper a lot of the noise back and have more of a residential neighborhood in here. I want to make sure that the noise isn't too crazy coming from that area, though. It'll be pretty loud in here directly, but down the hill would be a fine spot for some residences. So let's think about our traditional needs that we always have to think about. And I haven't placed a bouncy house yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I think that would be kind of fun. And I want to consider a unique building. One thing that might be interesting would be the winter market. This is kind of a larger asset, and this is something that will attract visitors year-round, supposedly. So I think it makes sense to find a nice spot for that. Fits in here perfectly. So, maybe we'll, rezone some things as needed. To take care of some demand. The commercial in here doesn't have a high entertainment value, so if we were to add something up there, I think that would be pretty reasonable. Let's see. I think we have some good options available to us that we can use. So I like the skate park. It's a different option. So maybe we'll place that and call it a day. So I'm going to zone some residential now. We'll see what happens over here as this develops. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do with everything over here. I initially thought I liked the idea of tourism, but it turns out that tourism really is just a bunch of hotels. So I'm going to completely scrap that and say that tourism probably isn't the appropriate specialization. I think maybe leisure would be more appropriate, just because it would give some interesting options. I think the leisure buildings are a lot cooler than the tourism. Leisure tends to be things like gyms and nightclubs and stuff like that. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to destroy everything that we have here so far and build new buildings, but I'm okay with that. I just didn't like what we were seeing. So we can come back to that in the future and see what happens over there. I want to check back up on our transit, and it seems that our metro line is getting some more passengers, though it's not quite getting the use that I thought it would. We're still seeing that there's a lot of people on the buses, and we're just seeing that this is a pretty popular spot. I wonder why more people aren't using the metro, but I think time will tell. Maybe until we build out more over here, there's not really much of an incentive for people to use the metro. So we'll just have to see what happens. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Definitely let me know if you have any suggestions, and stay tuned for more content. Thanks.
I never thought I'd be so empty, so alone and afraid. Wasn't looking for a lover. Nobody understood where I've been. I guess I thought I needed more time to protect my love from potential offense. So notice that you were checking for me. We were just friends, so we started building trust, and my fragile heart started to mend. Yeah, I should have paid attention. You would have been the obvious choice. Time to see clearly, dig deep and cut through the noise. So then you came around and you but so you and I'm not surprised by what I found, 'cause I know I needed something different, and it had to be you. Out the blue, somebody who would listen, and it had to be you. Out of all the people to revive my love, couldn't be just anyone. But baby, it had to be you.